Hi there, I'm Nick Frank, creative media producer at AgileAssets. Today on Ask the Expert, I'm talking with Chris McGee about how he helped modernize the City of Raleigh's asset management practices. Chris has been engaged in transportation and public works asset maintenance and management for more than 30 years. He is the president of the North Carolina chapter of the American Public Works Association, serves in an advisory capacity to the AASHTO Transportation System Preservation Technical Services Program, and former governor-appointed chair of the North Carolina Underground Damage Prevention Review Board. His interests include asset management, collaborative partnerships, public infrastructure finance, and performance metrics. Chris, thanks for sharing your expertise with us today.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for having me on today.
Let's dive right into it by just giving us a little bit about what you do for the City of Raleigh.
So I am the Assistant Director of Transportation for the City of Raleigh. That's in North Carolina on the east coast of the U.S. I have been with the City of Raleigh about 12 years. I am responsible for the overall management of the right-of-way and most of the assets that are located within the right-of-way, with the exception for the potable water and municipal sewer. So pavements, sidewalks, curb and gutter, just pick an asset. When I came to Raleigh 12 years ago, we really didn't have an asset management plan. We did have a big focus on our pavements, but it was more of a spreadsheet, kind of back of the envelope, very rudimentary practices, the way we evaluated data and made decisions and where we spent money. And it was a very limited amount of money. And primarily we did a mill and fill resurfacing. That was really the only tool we had in the toolbox. That was what Raleigh did. They had not ventured out really beyond that any. I did begin an education process over the years with my senior management and our city council. There was quite a bit of turnover for the first 7 or 8 years. Our council has the potential to turn over every 2 years. And unfortunately, a lot of our senior management staff turned over after just a few years after I had gotten everyone educated. So it really didn't get off the ground as far as having an asset management program in the formal sense. Eventually, I stayed long enough, our council stayed long enough, my new management staff stayed long enough. I was able to educate everyone, and we were eventually able to really begin the process of building a more formalized and robust asset management program.
So just based on that, clearly it took a lot of time, a lot of effort to get a lot of this stuff moving and off the ground. You've been a really big proponent on modernizing Raleigh's transportation asset management practices. In your mind, what did you see were some of the main problems that the city was trying to solve by updating its approach to asset management?
So in a nutshell, we have very limited funding, and it's where to spend that funding to achieve the maximum improvement to the system. I mean, that was the real driver. Inherently, I knew from experience in working with other people in the industry over the years that most people approached maintenance, whether it was pavements or sidewalks, bridges, pick an asset. It was kind of a worst first. It was the squeaky wheel syndrome. What needs it the most? What's screaming the loudest? Let's throw money at it and make it go away. We all know that's not really the best way to manage an asset. So really, the goal was to move away from a worst first management system and get into something that felt more sustainable.
So safe to say you were pretty big you were very instrumental in the city's decision to start implementing asset management. Why did you think that was so important for the City of Raleigh?
So if you look at just the City of Raleigh street system, just the asphalt component. The asphalt component in Raleigh street system is the single largest asset owned by the City of Raleigh. It's valued at over $700 million, and that was a couple of years ago. It's actually probably a little higher than that now. When you combine the additional assets of our storm sewer system, sidewalks, curb and gutter, again, bridges, we easily have assets that top $1 billion. And it was really important to me that we took, the limited amount of resources we had, and that we were, doing the best job we could do to manage those assets. And again, intuitively, I knew that a worst first approach was not the best way to manage that system.
So, Chris, how did you convince the city management that it was time to invest in an asset management system?
So basically, I took the approach and I convinced them that they really could not afford not to invest in an asset management system. I approached a number of municipal governments all across the United States and found that a lot of folks were using the AgileAssets pavement analyst to evaluate their systems. And I was able to take data from the other municipal governments and a variety of graphs that they had prepared on their systems from a before and after, and I could use those as samples to show my city manager and my division manager that, hey, these different municipalities have really saved a lot of money in where they are investing their dollars because they're investing in the right place. And this software system, AgileAssets Pavement Analyst, is key because it has the ability to look at all these millions of pieces of data that the human brain just can't comprehend. We can't look at 12,000 records that each have 400 pieces of data strewn somewhere in it and make any sense of it. We have the ability to condense it down to a single number and look at a number, but that really doesn't tell us a story about what the proper treatment is. And so the AgileAssets Pavement Analyst has the ability to look at all of that data and evaluate it for what it is and make really good decisions about where these dollars need to be spent. And what we realized was that in many cases, the investment would pay for itself over a couple of years in exchange for investing the same dollars, but investing them in the right place and seeing the increase in the overall system condition. So that was really key to convincing our manager.
And is that some of the evidence and information that you brought to the city council to convince them that, hey, the city should invest in this asset management system?
We did. We polished it up a little more for our city council. And what we were able to do was take some of the data we had, and we didn't have the software for the AgileAssets Pavement Analyst at the time, but we used the data we had and we could project where our system rating would be without any sort of really good management system, and draw parallels between where we were now and where other municipal governments were prior to having the AgileAssets Pavement Analyst. And we could project where we would be potentially based on where they were. So it was really drawing some parallels and trying to build a good story and tell a good story to our city council. And we convinced them that we could provide much better funding scenarios for decision making, and we could make our dollars go much further by using the AgileAssets Pavement Analyst software.
So you got the city management behind you, and then you got the city council behind you. So after you got that approval, what was the implementation process and strategy?
So a big part of the strategy was finding someone to help us select software, and then finding someone to help us implement software. So we really went on the hunt. I talked to a lot of the folks in these municipal governments around the country, and kind of what their process was, how they went through it. And so basically my implementation strategy was one of copy and paste. I pulled RFPs and RFQs from all over the country, and then we kind of tailored them to cut and paste and pick the pieces that we thought would would be what we were looking for in the city of Raleigh. And ultimately, we were able to pull something together that led us to the Kircher Group and AgileAssets software.
And when you had all of these pieces in place, and you and the city of Raleigh and your whole team was like, all right, we got this. What goals did you originally set for what you hoped could come from this?
So three primary goals for me were, and the biggest piece was low subjectivity. It's everybody looks at data and we see it different ways and we glean different things from it. So I wanted a software that could look at the data and not in a subjective way, but in a very clinical manner, and produce the second thing that I was looking for, which was high repeatability. And the third thing I was looking for was high accuracy. And so what we found in AgileAssets software was that indeed, there is really low subjectivity. You set the rules, you set the parameter, and the AgileAssets pavement analyst is the real workhorse that goes in and pulls all this out and can help you develop a plan. And the other thing that we found was it was a highly repeatable process and a highly accurate process.
Which is extremely valuable to be able to continuously do that and repeat the process over and over again. Now, I'm sure in that process, though, there were some challenges that I'm sure y'all faced while going through the implementation process.
There was quite a bit of a challenge in the entire implementation process, and that was primarily in I did not have staff that really had good skills to even know where to begin the implementation of a software system like this. I had some awareness and some skills. I kind of knew what I was looking for, which led to another big challenge. Was what I was looking for was not necessarily what some of my staff members were looking for. We had failed to have the conversation early on regarding what would this look like once we completed it. We all had an idea, we just hadn't shared those ideas with each other. So it really was good to have the Kircher Group here through the implementation. Not that they told us exactly what we needed or how we needed it, but they were able to show us different strategies and different challenges that other municipal governments have used through their implementation of the AgileAssets pavement analyst. And so we were able to glean a lot from that. And it really turned out to be a lot less challenging once we, as a group, the city of Raleigh, figured out what we wanted the end product to look like.
And that's kind of the great part too about the transportation industry is, there's so many cities, counties, and states that are all suffering from the same exact challenges as each other. And so instead of being kind of a siloed spot, it's always great to be able to kind of open up and say, hey, what are you guys doing? What are y'all doing? How can we kind of feed off of each other? So I want to dive into some of how y'all are achieving the goals that you set and the various areas of your business and how you see this progressing in the future. What has been the city of Raleigh's pavement management strategy?
This sounds really cliche, especially if you are in the industry, but it's the right treatment at the right time. Again, I mentioned earlier, I come from a background working with folks for many years that, it was a worst first strategy. And we never seemed to be able to get ahead because we were always responding to somebody's complaint or we were responding to some road that was falling apart. And rather than spend, a fraction of the cost to do some sort of a preventive maintenance treatment, we were rebuilding roads. And so really our pavement management strategy and AgileAssets pavement analyst lends itself directly to this strategy. And it is providing the right treatment to that pavement surface at the right time, whether that be a rejuvenator or a crack seal, a chip seal, a mill and fill, a patch, whatever that treatment might be. the AgileAssets pavement analyst is the real workhorse that gets us to that end.
Now, a big component to a lot of this is data and being able to compile really good data. So what are some of the key metrics that you track in terms of pavement data?
So we took a little bit different approach than the I guess the standard performance metrics or key metrics. I know alligator cracking and block cracking and rutting are all big things, and they're all keywords that you hear a lot of people talk about. But a lot of those things are based upon subjectivity. It's an individual looking at that. And so really what we have boiled ours down to, our key metric is crack density. We have, we've divided our system up. Every single mile of it is divided up into 2 meter sections. And each one of those sections has 5 zones per lane. And so we are evaluating every single individual area of asphalt that's roughly 2 meters by 3 meters. And we've developed a process that is it's roughly 90% accurate and 90% repeatable using the AgileAssets pavement analyst. And we know that because we have 5 control sections that we use for calibration and testing. And when we go back and we rerun the data and we run it through the system, we are getting numbers that are practically identical. I wouldn't dare say 100%. There's still some subjectivity there because there is some data that has to be subjectively evaluated, but our data processes are much better now.
And let's discuss a little bit about Bridge as well, because I know y'all use this for Bridge. So what has been your strategy and how have your processes for bridge management improved?
So while it does vary a little bit from pavements, it still is a lot about the right treatment at the right time. We are still in the process of building this out, but we're really close to having the AgileAssets bridge analyst built out as well. We believe that once we get it built out and it's operational, we get our biennial reports from our federal bridge inspection, and we believe that we will be able to manage that data so that we can put together better maintenance and management contracts for the repairs that cause the greatest distresses to our bridges and ultimately shorten the life of the bridge more rapidly.
And as we continue on, you guys are you have a lot of assets that you're managing for the city of Raleigh. And so let's discuss, Tiny, a little bit about your sidewalk and ramp management strategies.
Well, our first strategy is to find it all. I kind of say that and I laugh, but we as a city only began really managing sidewalk and doing sidewalk repairs about 7 years ago. Prior to that, a city ordinance was in place that made all of the maintenance requirements the responsibility of the adjacent property owner. We had a city council that finally realized that this is a city asset in a city right of way, and the city should be managing this asset and maintaining this asset. Our city council focused on getting the asset in-house really and beginning maintenance, and not so much on the management of the asset. So we know it's out there. We know a lot of streets have sidewalk and ADA ramps. We're in the process of now securing a contract for someone to come in and not only locate all of our sidewalk and all of our ADA ramps, but also to give us a condition assessment. We are currently working with the Kircher Group on how we're going to put this data into the AgileAssets system and how we're going to evaluate that system or evaluate that data within the system. The concern with sidewalks is it's not quite as straightforward as what it is with bridges or pavements. You do have a condition property for sidewalk when it comes to meeting ADA compliance. Cross slopes, cracks, heaves, a variety of things that can be wrong with sidewalks and ADA ramps. But you, in theory, can have two pieces of sidewalk that are the same length, the same width, the same number of cracks, the same number of trip hazards. One may be located in a very highly pedestrian area that's populated, and the other section may be on a cul-de-sac that serves 5 homes. So there has to be a component that speaks to the usage. And so we're slowly developing what that usage component looks like. But more to come on that. Hopefully in a year from now, I will have a really good handle on what all that looks like and can tell you a lot more about how we plan to implement that and make those improvements.
Well, Chris, then we'll bring you back on again. We can talk about all of that. I appreciate the deep dive into each of the individual sectors of what you guys are working on. But as we take a quick zoom out, what have you seen as the overall benefits since the city of Raleigh has implemented their asset management system?
The real benefit, just in the short time we've had it, is we have put together really good contracts for a variety of preventative maintenance that extends well beyond just mill and fill or resurfacing. And I'm not sure, well, I am sure, we could not have produced those contracts with the right streets getting the right treatment at the right time without the AgileAssets pavement analysts. So while we're not funded at a level that keeps our system from declining, what we have seen is that the rate of decline has been reduced. We were losing roughly 2 to 2.5 points in pavement condition each year. And with the investment we've made and running our various scenarios through AgileAssets pavement analysts, we're reducing that rate of decline to about 1.5 points. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, except a 3-point decline in my system represents about a $25 million loss. So if AgileAssets pavement analysts can take my decline from 2.5 points a year to 1.5 points a year, that 1 point represents about $8 million to $9 million for me. So my system did not decline that extra dollar amount because I was able to make better decisions for how we would implement or spend our dollars on our management.
Well, that is truly fascinating to hear. And one of the reasons I wanted to chat with you is I think the city of Raleigh has been a really great example of how an asset management system can truly help save money and be able to allocate resources in a different way. So, Chris, you're sitting here, you've been in this asset management world. There are other cities and counties all across the country, all across the world that are struggling with the same challenges that the city of Raleigh faced and is still facing. What are some pieces of advice that you could give other people in your position in other cities and counties to modernize their processes as we progress in the future?
First and foremost, if you don't have an asset management plan, educate your managers, educate your council, educate the people who control your purse strings. Educate yourself if you need to educate yourself. But you have to convince the people who hold the purse strings that randomly spending dollars, even on a small system, is not the most effective way to manage a budget. I've heard Stuart say more than one time, it's optimization, and that's what you're looking for. Even if you're a small municipality with 5 miles of streets to maintain and 10 miles of sidewalk and 8 stop signs, you still have assets and you have a budget to maintain those assets. And while it may seem very comprehensible to you that you can manage this really small asset extremely well on a small budget, the reality is that's still a massive amount of data that you really can't do the computations on to figure out what that best strategy is for spending those dollars. You really do need to have an asset management tool that has the capability of managing that data and scrutinizing that data and performing optimization analysis. I have been more than impressed with the AgileAssets pavement analyst. It really has been a fascinating tool. We even have some ideas that we may even try to really stretch and test its capabilities. We have had some thoughts that, what if we have one really large pot of dollars and we want to throw it into the system and let the analysts somehow figure out how much we need to spend on bridges, sidewalks, and pavements as a package. Now, that may be a much bigger conversation with a lot of people who are much smarter than I am, that know how to program and do things that I am just not privy to. But I think the real key is understanding and educating yourself that you do need help, and accepting the fact that you do need help. You really cannot manage it as well as you think you can, even on a small system. You may manage it well, but you will never be able to optimize it the way the AgileAssets payment analyst can optimize it.
Chris, before I let you get back to work, do you have any final thoughts?
Well, Nick, I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity, the platform to talk about asset management. I grew up on pavement management. That really turned into more of a love for asset management about 10 years ago. And the AgileAssets product has been the most impressive product that I've worked with. I've looked at a lot of products out there. I've talked to a lot of municipal governments that have the AgileAssets product along with other products. But I've not heard anyone really complain at all about using AgileAssets product, whether it was pavement analyst or bridge analyst. Everybody just talks about how really capable of doing optimization. And I just thank you for the opportunity to be able to talk about it and talk about asset management in general, and just express to people how important asset management really is. If you work in a municipal government, it does not matter large, small, what the population is or what your budget is. You still are a steward of those assets and a steward of those dollars. And I would encourage you to do everything you can to be a good steward of those dollars.
Chris McGee, the Assistant Transportation Director for the City of Raleigh in North Carolina, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
Thank you, Nick.